Alright guys, how is it going? We're here to do a tier list of the new Kamigawa legendary creatures. Alright, so we're right on into it. Basically, apart from just two little disclaimers here, basically all of this like rankings system and whatnot that I'm doing here, it's all based on my opinion for the most part. So any ranking or grading, you take it with a grain of salt. I'm trying to rank these on how powerful I think to a degree they are, as a sense, like not CDH level, of course, obviously to that extent, because I'm not that big on like knowing how that works and how powerful things are in that world. But yes, I am trying to rank these on how fun, how good I think they are as magic cards, how good they are as your commanders, because this is the place where a lot of people start. They go looking through EDH Rec, they go looking through these YouTube videos and whatnot, and you come across all these crazy legendaries that do all this amazing stuff, and it's like, well, I really want to play this really cool, amazing legend. I don't want to just play this random tutu that doesn't really do a whole lot. So that's sort of the first caveat. The second caveat is I'm not really doing any of the legends or any of the other special cards that are from the set boosters only. I'll be doing a separate video for all of those. I'm not going to rank them. I'm just going to discuss them. There will be a little bit of discussion with each of these, but mostly I'm just going to plop them in the place where I think they go. And I guess the last little disclaimer is, is that all of these letters and numbers or whatever are like, I don't know, a bit hard to define what exactly they are in a sense. So, you know, but of course we all know what sort of they mean. I'm just saying, you know, this is the way that I decided I wanted to do this one. If you guys like it, I'd love to hear you tell me so. If you don't like it, I'd love to hear you tell me so, because I wanted to do this in a more compact manner or as a clear manner as possible. And if I wanted to give rankings to each card, I thought it was easier for us to have a visual aspect to see what, you know, where these cards are at and whatnot. So let's just get right on into it for the most part and start looking at some of these great legendary cards for your commander decks. All right, so first is the mono white legendary. And now I'm going to say this about some of these mono commanders, that I'm not the hugest fan of mono colored decks, but I am going to be objective in saying what I think about these mono colored decks. If there's one or two or whatever that's really strong, I will give it a higher rank or whatever, based on what I think, you know, you can do with it in Commander. But anyway, first off, AO, basically big flying dragon guy. When he dies, you get two options. You can look at the top 7. You can get mana value of 4 permanents from among them onto the battlefield, or you can get 2+1/+1 counters on all your creatures and vehicles. So, like, I don't know about doing this as a vehicle commander. Maybe you can. That's a maybe. It's an okay card. I think this one is a little bit better than some of the other dragons that are in this set, for the most part, for what it does, especially in the colors that it's doing it for, giving white some sort of like consolation card draw or whatnot, sort of thing, or some sort of, you know, replacement effect to be like, oh, you lost one of your creatures, well, you can get some counters, or you can get some cards from the top of your deck into play, you know, so that's okay. I do think it is an interesting commander to build around to a degree, because would you want to continually sack this commander, and how are you going to get it back? That's the thing. Like, if you're going to go down that plan of going, okay, I want to get as much value out of this as possible, or I want to break this, essentially, in a sense, is like, how are you going to do that in mono white? And that's where it becomes like, well, so it is like that a little bit. There are some cards that you obviously can do with it. Phyrexian Arena, oh, not Phyrexian Arena, Phyrexian Altar and things like that, whatnot, to sacrifice it to get mana, and whatnot. I don't know how you can like get it out of your graveyard again and again. That's going to be a big problem. You're not going to be easily able to recast it because, again, you're in mono white. What ramp have you got? Like, unless you've got something that, you know, like basically that combos off with it, that you can sacrifice it, like the Jund Dragon style, food chain, you know, all that, you know, like unless you've got something like that that adds mana and can help you recast it, I just don't see you being able to abuse this in the way that I think it wants to be abused. And I'm going to say this about all the other dragons in the same way, but I do think that this one is interesting in a sense. So I do think it is a B. So we're going to move it up to being a B here. Anyway, Ryusi, same sort of deal. Big dragon boy, red this time. When he dies, we exile the top 3 cards of our library, I believe. So yeah, actually the top 2 cards, and it's 3 treasures otherwise. I think that this is, like I sort of was saying about the other one, this one is a little less strong, in my opinion. Yeah, you do get 2 cards when it dies, but I think, you know, looking at all those cards and getting mana value 4 or less for free is probably better than getting the top 2 cards and having to cast them. So that is, you know, like Scry 7 or whatever. That is pretty darn strong, or whatnot. You could just get 2 lands with this thing, like, or you could get nothing, like literally nothing, like a couple mana rocks that you don't really need. Like, so it is hit or miss with that ability. Well, though it can be really good, but I do think that the treasure mode is good. I just don't see why you're paying 4 mana to get 3. Like, sure, if it dies, you get that investment back a little bit, and sure, maybe you can cast it again next turn or something. But I just don't see where you're going with it. So we're going to give this one a C. I'm actually going to go through right here, right now, and we're going to give all of the other dragons a C. The black dragon, blue dragon, where's green dragon? Over there. Green dragon, all of you get a C. So basically I'm saying that all of these are on that same power level. The black dragon, I think, is quite interesting, being able to reanimate anything from the graveyard and whatnot, but like, again, that one probably has as much support, much more support to get it back out of the graveyard and whatnot, things like this, or get it back into your hand from your library or whatnot, or from your command zone or whatnot, things like that, because there's a lot of decks that are built around Phage in mono black, so there's a lot of ways to sort of do it with those colors, apparently, I think. So, you know, like, there might be more to it than that. I do think that the green one can be strong in certain scenarios. I really think the blue one, though, is more of a standard or limited sort of card, though it can do some strong things. But I think all of these will be contenders for any, like, 5-color dragon pile that you build. I think that they do have legs in that regard. So you might want to consider them for that. But let's move on. Next one is Go-Go. This one's very interesting. 1 red mana to give all your team haste is really quite good. 5 mana to get a 5/5 flyer. That's okay, but you do have to have something that is modified. I'm going to give this one a C as well. This can go in some decks and can be quite good, but I do think that as a commander, and that's where we're looking at these. We're not looking at these in the 99. First off, we're looking at these as if you're playing commander, and I'm going to pick this as my commander. So I don't think that it has that much going on for it. Yeah, haste can be useful, 5/5s can be useful, but you've really got to downgrade that cost of that ability, and there's not that many ways. Not that there's none in mono red, but there aren't that many like ways to actually like copy that ability. There are there are ways to copy that ability, but there aren't that many ways to reduce its cost. So I do think it has a limited amount of power. Now, all of these shrines, I think all of them are uncommons, I believe. Oh, no, I think the red one might be a rare. I'm not 100% sure. But all of them, I've read through them all. I'm going to give them all C's. They're all just okay. They are fine if you want to, try to build around them. But I think, like, most people will want to build around some 5 color shrine pile rather than trying to build around some of these, like, mono shrines. Like, you're just not gonna get enough shrines in 1 color to make a real deck around any of these. So having these as your commander, I don't think you're gonna get much out of them. It's not like you're gonna get nothing because it's on your commander again, so I guess you will get something out of it. You just won't get the levels of things that you'll get out of it if you actually put it in a dedicated shrine deck. So I think these deserve to be in a shrine deck specifically and not just in like a mono deck. All right, up next is Grease Fang, an interesting Orzhov commander that works with vehicles. Now, we are getting the blue-white vehicle precon for this year. So I think there's maybe another vehicle commander here somewhere, but I can't quite remember where it is right now. But I think this is okay. It returns vehicles from your graveyard to the battlefield, gives them haste, and lets them attack as if they're creatures. So that's okay, but then you've got to bounce them to your hand. So it's okay for if your vehicles have died or if you're on some sort of vehicle mill plan, I guess. So it can be decent, but again, I don't know. It's tough to say where specifically the best vehicle commander is, and that's kind of cool to be like, wow, do I play the Boros one or do I play the Orzhov one or do I play the Azorius one? Like, there's a few options, but maybe you just play 5 colors or whatever, or 4 colors, because I think I want to see a vehicle deck that isn't in green, because green doesn't care about artifacts anyway, so it would make sense, in my opinion, to have a 4 color vehicles deck. This seems like a good support piece for that kind of a deck. Unfortunately, there isn't a real commander for it, which kind of is a bit stinky, but whatever. Maybe one day they'll actually print it. I'm sure they probably will because they love to print legendaries for us. So I'm sure this will get, maybe a 5 color deck one day. But as for now, I think it's a good support piece for a vehicle deck. But as a commander, it doesn't excite me, though I do think it is pretty good still. But I will give it a C for now. Right here, right now. The next card, actually, I'm going to talk about these 2 cards together because I really think that they should be talked about together. So first off, we've got Haiko, the mono red commander, essentially. So whenever she attacks, you can cast an artifact from your graveyard. Pretty decent, or when a warrior does it, at least. Then we've got Noaki, basically the same thing, but for enchantments. Both of these, I feel like they really should have partner with, and I think a lot of people want that. They want to see these guys work together, so you can cast these artifacts and enchantments and whatnot from your graveyard. If they had partner, I think they would go up a bit, but unfortunately, I think that they're on this level where they are only so powerful because you've got to play them in the 99 of some other Boros deck or whatever. So And to me, if you're playing one, like, to me, it's a bit weird. Like, a deck that cares as much about artifacts as it cares about enchantments is kind of an oddball deck for the most part. So it's good value for the most part, but that's kind of it. So I do think that they are very limited. If they were partners, it would be a bit different, but of course they're not. So again, I know some people will try to rule zero it, and I'm probably fine with people rule zeroing these two to have partner. That's all cool with me, but yeah, just remember that these do have that restriction of probably being in the 99 most of the time, and they really do care about different things. So you really want to figure out what your deck is exactly doing and whatnot, and how much percent of artifacts versus enchantments you want to run, because you really need good artifacts, just not mana rocks. Even though that can be okay to get back mana rocks, I do think that you would want more. So anyway, we'll move on. So next up, we've got Hitsugu. Hitsugu is a pretty interesting commander, being able to sacrifice creatures to scry to. That is for 1 mana. That is pretty cheap, but it's not free, which means that it's probably a lot more weakened than what it can be. But its other activated ability is to exile the top card of your library, and you can play it this turn. And if it's a non-land card, he deals damage equal to its CMC to somebody or something. So, like, I can see that there could be some sort of sacrifice pile built around him, but honestly, he's not like that good. Like, unfortunately, I do think that there could be some shenanigans and whatnot, their combos and whatnot in there, but honestly, you just need free sack outlets. I don't think that the scry is that amazing. It can set up the top for you so that you know what you're exiling, so that you know how much mana you need to be able to spend and whatnot, things like this. So that can be good, but then you also need this sacrifice sub-plan versus this I'm going to cheat things into play sort of sneak attack style, but from the top of my deck sort of thing going on. So you need all this big stuff, but you also need this big stuff to sort of make tokens or whatnot, things, cheap things to sacrifice, so that you can keep like scrying and seeing that you can like find good things to put into play to get more things to sack, to scry more, to play more things and whatnot. So like it's a lot of mana investment to get all of these things. So I end up thinking that it's not that amazing as a commander overall. I do think it will be good in the 99 of some decks as well, but I do think that it is a very limited sort of card because you do have to pay for it. All right, next up is Hinta. I think I'm saying that right. Jeskai Commander makes our spells that target multiple things 1 cheaper for each target, and our opponent's spells that target multiple things 1 more per target. I think that this is an amazingly powerful commander. I've seen lots of things about this commander. This is an insanely good commander. I don't know whether to put it in S tier or A tier. I do think it is really good though. So I will think I put it in S tier. I do think it is that sort of strong. It is potentially a CDH commander. I have seen several CDH people talking about it and whatnot. So it has a lot of potential. It doesn't have as many feel bads, I guess, as Grand Arbiter to a degree. But it does have some feel bads, I guess, to a degree. But it also is just an engine that you can use to, free cast a lot of spells, or, free target your opponent's stuff, or free target your opponent's even. So that can be really powerful. And it's in 3 very good colors for a lot of sort of these sort of shenanigans that do target multiple permanents and players and things like that. So it can be really powerful. I do think that there is a lot to build with this. So I think it's really a spellslinger style commander for the most part. So it does have its sort of limits where you can sort of play only certain things for the most part, but it's still really strong even with that restriction. Any commander that's not telling you to play every card in the world is on a restriction. Every card has a restriction, so this restriction isn't very bad. Like, it doesn't like do everything, which is good. This is the sort of commander I want to see, a commander that has some flexibility. It's not a commander I would build, but it's got enough flexibility to be like, okay, I can see what I want to do with this, and I'll get a lot of value out of it and whatnot, and I can really build around it, versus a commander that's just like, oh my god, I have everything on my commander, and it's all about my commander, and once my commander's gone, well, oh shit, like, but anyway, it is so strong that I think it deserves to be up there. Next up is our Mardu commander, Ishin. Hopefully I'm saying that right as well. But basically, he doubles the triggered abilities of any ability that triggers on any of our permanents. So whether we attack or whether our opponents attack, if a triggered ability happens, we get to trigger it an additional time. Now that is pretty darn good. I think that Wulfric or Wulfgar, who was a Gruul commander, really was quite an interesting commander. This is not exactly that, but it is sort of similar in many ways. But I did think that commander was potentially in the wrong colors, and I did think that this commander is quite a good commander, and I was actually thinking about building it myself potentially. I still might think about building it, but it is really good for decks that want to go to combat and want to get lots of value out of attacking. This is the sort of deck that I would really actually like, I think. Just, I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to get some triggers on my stuff and, get extra value from attacking. The one problem that I had with Wulfgar was that it didn't happen with all my permanents and things like that. This does, so that really is a great upgrade from that, and I do think I might build around it, so we'll have to wait and see, but I do think it is a solid A commander. It's not the most powerful, but if you build around it right, I do think that there is a lot of meat on the bones here for you to build a really good deck with this. And yeah, I think it's going to be one of the more popular commanders from the set. Let's move on. So, Ginger Taxius, he's back. He's badder than ever, I guess, to a degree. So, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery or artifact spell, we get to copy it. And whenever our opponents cast an instant or sorcery or artifact spell, it gets counted as long as it's the first one. So I do think that there are some shenanigans that you can do with this, especially if you can play things at flash speed, which you can find some ways to do pretty easily. So I do think that this can be a powerful commander. I don't think it's as powerful as Urza, so if you want to build a nicer Urza style deck, I guess this is sort of the way to go, but it does hinder your opponents like a lot of the Praetors do. But I don't know, if you're not playing an instant sorcery or artifact heavy deck, I guess this doesn't affect you too much. But again, if you need to get rid of Ginger Taxius or something else, then you might need more instant and sorceries in your deck that you can just like toss out there to be like, well, I get this one counted, and now I'm going to cast the real spell that I really need to cast that gets rid of Ginger Taxius or whatever. So there are some things that might be awkward like that, or you might want some cards to be counted, like, somebody's about to wrath the board, and then you're like, wow, I'm saved because, I'm an aggro deck, and if they had wiped the board, then I would have been in big trouble and I wouldn't be able to deal with the Ginger Taxius player or the person who's about to wrath the board or whatever. So it does depend. Like, it can help you out in certain circumstances sometimes, or certain people might not just play into it. So you can get around some of these things that will hinder you sometimes as well. But I really think it is a great commander. So we're going to give it an A. Again, it's not the most powerful, it's not the most broken, but I do think it is decent. Next is Kadama of the West tree. So this completes the Kadama cycle, unless they're going to like redo the whole cycle, which I wouldn't mind actually, because the other three besides the East tree and the West tree are pretty bad for the most part. But basically, if your stuff has equipment or auras or has +1 counters, when they hit, you get to search your library for a basic land, put them on the battlefield for each creature that hit your opponents. This is a good card on its own. I don't know how good of a commander it is. This is wanting you to play either like auras, and I don't think I would play auras with this, equipments or +1/+1 counters. So either equipments or +1/+1 counters, in my opinion, because auras I find just are too fragile, and we're going to talk about that more coming up in a minute. But I do find that they're too fragile. So this is a +1/+1 counter or equipment commander. It's a go wide commander, which is interesting because most equipment commanders or most +1 counter commanders are Voltron style commanders for the most part. But I do think that this has potential, mostly in the 99, though I do think it can see some play as a commander. I think it's still an A, so we're going to give it an A over here, as far as what I think how good it is, because, you know, even if it's just a 99 card, it's still really strong a lot of the time to ramp you some lands if you've got an equipment deck, or though why you have an equipment deck in green, I don't know. Or if you have some sort of aura deck, which I don't know why you're playing auras, because auras just die too quickly, too easily, and whatnot. So again, just I guess +1/+1 counter decks, for the most part. Yes, again, +1 creatures die, but you know, at least you will mostly be able to do stuff with them for a few turns, for the most part, and you don't have to have that awkward phase of being like, okay, I'm going to equip some of my stuff and then try to go to combat or whatever, and then someone's just like, haha, I blow up all your stuff or whatever, and things like that. So it can be really sucky to have some of those things happen. So I do think that +1/+1 counters are the way to go with it. This next commander, Kurosi, unfortunately to me, I think that this commander is a big D. For don't even bother, because basically, unless you're playing against a petitioner's deck or a deck that's running the other things that you can play multiple copies of, I can't remember, my brain's just gone off. Unless you're playing against those kind of decks, you're not going to get much value off of exiling multiple copies. Yes, sure, you can exile a copy from somebody's graveyard of something, but it just doesn't do enough else. Sure, you can get an exile, but that's it. To me, like, where are you building around this? What are you doing with this? Like, you get to exile a thing, yeah, sure, great. If this is in your 99, I think it's probably okay, but as a commander, I don't think it excites anyone just to exile a card at sorcery speed for 5 mana. And yeah, if you're playing against those petitioner style decks, sure, then maybe it's really good, but still that's a meta call. And again, you can just toss it in your deck if you're playing Demir. I think there are better graveyard hate or better ways to stop those sort of decks and whatnot. So I don't think that this is that great. But anyway, we'll move on to the next. Next is a 5-color dragon, technically by having 5 colors in its casting, in its activation cost rather. Korodi, sorry. This is an interesting dragon, I guess, to a degree. I guess it's just mostly going to go into other 5-color dragon decks, because I think the ability to pay 5 to give it +5/+5, and you have to have all colors to do that, is a little bit poop. And just when it ETBs, you give something indestructible. I don't think it's that good. So I'm going to give this one a D, unfortunately. I don't think it does a whole lot of anything as a commander. So I don't really see it becoming a really decent, good commander or a highly played commander or anything like that. So it probably will see play in some dragon decks, but yeah, that's about it, I think. Moving on, though. Next is Light Paws. He is a fox boy. And, like, initially I wasn't very hot on this card at all. Basically, when we play an enchantment, we can tutor up an aura and put it onto Light Paws. So this is another Voltron commander deck, in my opinion. I think that there was some ramblings and talk that he could be a very strong commander, because you just tutor those auras onto the battlefield for free. So again, that's okay, but they've got to be less cost than the aura you just cast or whatnot. So that is a little bit of a hurdle. And just again, like, aura decks are very fragile. Yes, sure, again, you can kill people very quickly with commanders like this, because all you've got to do is get to 21, hit somebody, and then they're dead, and then hit the next person, and then hit the next person. So if no one can stop you in those few turns, you just win the game. But if somebody stops you, you're probably very stuck. And again, you're going to lose all your auras to the graveyard, except in, like, maybe if you have Griff Spoon, you can get it back to your hand. There's one or two other cards that you can get back to your hand that are like that. So you just lose a whole lot of card advantage. There isn't a whole lot of card advantage in white. Not that there's none for auras or whatnot, sort of this style of deck. I don't know if this is better than Shram, but you could say that this is maybe as good as Shram. I'm going to give this a B, because I think it's decent. It can do some stuff. It does give you a very specific build around path, but unfortunately, I do think, like, even if it can be perhaps a CDH commander or a very strong Voltron commander, I'm going to knock it down that bit, because it is very fragile, and you need to realize that it is very fragile. And those times that you'll sit there and go, well, now what am I going to do? Because now I might not have many auras left in my deck, and how am I ever going to get my commander back out because white doesn't ramp or whatnot? Things like this, or white doesn't draw, and things like this. So there are a lot of hurdles to get around in a deck like this. I think it is great in the 99 of some other Voltron whatnot style decks that are playing auras, though again, I don't understand why you're playing auras, because auras are just too weak, in my opinion, to really play, because you just lose them too easily and whatnot. So yeah, but anyway, we'll move on. That's just me, like, looking at it that way. The next one, I think this next one's a D. This is Niami. So if you have an artifact and an artifact and an enchantment, not easy for me to say, when he attacks, you make a 2/2 creature. Like, for 5 mana, this does not wow me, and I don't think it'll wow anyone as a commander. Maybe there's some decks that it could go in, but, like, to me, like, yeah, aura and, oh, well, not aura, but I'm about to say equipment, but whatever. Enchantment and artifact style decks like Leela and things like that it would be okay. But again, I just, like, I think, like, if you think 5 mana, half of, whatever it is, the Black Titan is good, then I don't know. I think that's a bit of a weird synergy to try to go about, making these random 2/2s and whatnot. Why? Like, I don't understand. If this was a Voltron commander and it got +2/+2 or something like that when it attacked or whatnot, then I could see like the path that you're trying to go down. This maybe like the token deck, the black-white token deck commander could use this, maybe, but there's so few spaces that I could see this actually seeing play. So unfortunately, we're just going to move on to the next thing. All right, so next is Nashi, a rat commander that's also a ninja. So when he hits, he exiles the top card of each player's library, and you may play those cards by paying life rather than paying their cost. You have to pay life rather than paying their CMC. I do think that this is an okay card in a ninja deck, but unfortunately, I don't think it's that good as the head of a ninja style commander deck. If you're in a specifically theft style variant, or you want to be a more theft variant, it might be okay. But again, you're going to miss out on so much stuff that's in blue because this is a mono black commander. It doesn't even have Commander Ninjutsu, so that like having Commander Ninjutsu is kind of busted. But since it doesn't even have a Commander Ninjutsu that is relevant, like that you can figure out for a couple mana or whatever, maybe more than Yuriko, would be good. But again, just since it doesn't have that ability, you are going to get taxed on it. So, and I just think you're missing out on too much that's in blue. So I just don't think that this is worth your time that much. But again, it is okay in the ninja deck specifically, so I'll give it a C for now. It's not a total wash. It will do some stuff in certain decks, but I don't think it's that good as a commander of itself. If you want to take the challenge of building this, go right ahead. But again, I just don't see that you'll be able to do much with it. There's not enough unblockable stuff in black that can help you get it through. And then again, you know, you won't be able to get much out of it because again you're missing so much stuff in blue, so many ninjas, so much other synergy pieces and stuff. So yeah, I don't see what you're doing with it. Next is an extra combat commander. So if a warrior or samurai attacks alone, a lot like the other two we talked about that were in Boros, attack alone, you get an extra combat. So that's pretty nice for certain decks, I do think. But again, it's tough to evaluate exactly where this should go to a degree. I do perhaps think it is a B though. Extra combats can be very strong, though you can get stopped again by a lot of the same issues that plague the Aura deck commander. So I would think that it is roughly at that level where you can get value out of it. It does seem like it's more of a Voltron style commander as well to a degree. So I can see that you could build it in that way, or you could build it as a go wide deck. But I do think that the best way would probably be to be a Voltron deck. You just attack with this guy, get an extra combat, get in for another, 9, 10 damage or whatever, shorten that clock somehow. Things like that. If you have more rag, it's really good because if you deal 10 damage in one turn, the next combat phase, you get an additional +1, so that means you'll be dealing lethal commander damage. Other effects like that, whatever it is, Kedis, whenever you deal damage to one player, you deal it to each player. So even if you're not getting in exactly lethal, even if you're getting in 14 commander damage on each of your opponents, it's still really quite good to get that damage to snowball and to get that victory later on, because it will mean that you will close out the games pretty quick. But anyway, next up This one is kind of like a Monarch commander, though it's definitely not a Monarch commander. If you hit someone and it hasn't got indestructible, it gets indestructible. But if somebody hits you for combat damage, then it loses an indestructible counter. I don't know what you can do with this. There's not enough text on this card to really want me to think about building a deck around this. I guess it's another Voltron commander for the most part. That's the way I would see you do something with this. Keep it indestructible, keep hitting your opponents, don't let your opponents hit you. Some sort of stacks Voltron style deck. Like indestructible isn't that important, I don't think. So I just don't know. I just don't see where this goes. I do think that there could be some stuff around it, so I'll give it a C for now, as far as this goes. So we'll move on. Next is Umazawa. So he's really good. He's really strong. He's getting a S already. He's going way up there, right up the top, along with the other one. He's so strong. He ninjutsu stuff into the battlefield for 4 mana. You can get your Ginger Taxius. You can get all your stuff all your big scary stuff into the battlefield for 4 mana. It's really scary, really powerful. So yeah, he's really strong. He can do a whole lot of stuff with a whole lot of cards. By ninjutsuing, essentially sneak attacking them into play, in a sense, but you don't have to return them, which is really amazing. And there's just so much in these colors that you can sort of do. There's already the ninja deck that exists, so you play all these cheap evasive things, then you play all these big, powerful effects that will, wreck your opponents and whatnot. So this is a commander, again, I probably wouldn't have any interest in building myself, but I can recognize how strong it is and how much it probably will be good. Like, it's not CDH good, probably, though you could make it fairly strong, I do think, to a degree. But again, in casual games, this is just going to sneak attack essentially all the big scary things into play that you just don't want to see. So I really think that this is going to be one of the top tier commanders that a lot of people are going to want to build, because it's just got such a powerful, interesting ability for you to work around, and such a cool sort of build round to actually get the juice flowing and like build something with this thing. So I think it's a great commander. Speaking of great commanders, the next commander is a really good commander as well. I think, I don't know where this should go. Should this be an A or should this be an S? I think, excuse me, that shouldn't come up. I think that this should be, this should be an S. Let's go with that. It's really good. This is a Saga commander for the most part, or a sort of enchantments matter style commander, as if we haven't seen that in Celestia recently, but it is mainly to do with sagas and things like that. So being able to tap it to put a lore counter on each of your sagas, being able to advance them up much more quickly than what they would normally do, because usually sagas are pretty slow. When this is out, you get that extra trigger. Usually, like, the first thing is what you want out of the saga. Sometimes it's the second, but often it is really the third if you can get to it, or the fourth, depending. But there are a lot of sagas that are in these colors that this could work well with. It returns sagas from your battlefield to your hand if you want to reset them, or if you want to return them from your graveyard. It also does that, which is really good. I think that this is another top tier commander that a lot of people will want to build. I was thinking about maybe building it because I've wanted to build an enchantment based commander for a long time, but I haven't really found one that I wanted to build. This one seemed cool, but sagas are a bit like weak in that sense of they are slow, and this helps that out. And sagas that sort of, a lot of them don't do quote unquote enough to like be worth the initial investment. And then again, it's like, well, once they do the initial thing, they're gone, and I can't really get them back out or do anything more with them. So it's really hard to keep the gas coming to a degree. But with a commander like this, I think it's really good. You can just like keep chaining things together, keep getting them back from your graveyard, keep getting them back to your hand and things like that. Keep resetting them, keep playing them, keep, adding lore counters to them, getting more and more value out of them. So I think it's a really great commander. I don't know whether you want to play 5-color shrines or what, not shrines, sagas or whatever, or 4-color or whatever, but I still think like even if there isn't a whole lot of sagas and whatnot in this color pairing, there's still probably enough to make an okay deck around it. Though I do like limiting myself sometimes because limitations breed creativity. So I really like that part of some of these commanders sometimes. So I do think we should move on to the next thing because we've got a couple more. Next is a very interesting one, Shiki, or Shaky, however you're meant to say that. So when you activate him for 2 mana, you get to look at the top cards of your top 4 cards of your library, whatever it is, and put a land from among them into the battlefield tapped. So essentially, it ramps you, and then mills the rest of those cards, and then you can pay XX and green to return a non-legendary card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is kind of like a Muldrotha effect to a degree, in a sense. I think it'd be really good in Muldrotha. It's kind of like whatever that thing is. If you sack it and you mill till you get a basic, it's sort of like that, but it's sort of like Dustwat Recruiter, where you keep activating it, keep milling it. It's actually a lot like some of those cards that you do find in typical Muldrotha and Merrin decks, where you're just trying to mill your cards or trying to get cards in your graveyard somehow, and get them back for cheaper or keep recurring them and things like that. This is a interesting commander. It's a mono commander. I don't 100% like get the deck that you would build with this as the head of it, but it's so interesting to think about, and that's cool because it's like, okay, how can I build a mono green reanimator deck or whatnot? How can I build a mono green graveyard deck? That's interesting. So I do think it is quite good. I will give it an A for now because it does ramp you, and if nothing else, the ramp is at least okay. It's 4 mana to ramp. Sure, that's a lot slower than a lot of things you want, but it does come out fairly early, and you can probably activate it straight away the next turn to get your mill plan going, and it just sits out there on the battlefield. It's just one of those things that it's sort of unassuming to a degree, and most people won't pay too much mind to it. So you can fly under the radar a little bit, and then you can just be like reanimating stuff from your graveyard. Like, again, you get all of this stuff back from your graveyard, and you kind of sneak attack it in a sense. You don't have to pay for its actual cost, you just have to pay XX and green. So that can work out to be cheaper in some senses, but it can also work out to be a lot more. But yeah, as a 2-mana commander, it's going to be hard to ramp into this, I guess, but it's going to be a lot easier to ramp into the rest of your deck, especially with this as your face commander, because it's going to keep getting you mana all the time, and it's kind of going to keep getting you access to more and more cards. So I think that's really good. But we better move on to the next one. Next is this weird Azorius bounce commander. I don't quite know what to make of this. Basically, you pay white and X to bounce a non-land permanent of mana value X to someone's hand. It can be yours, can be an opponent's, whatever. Whenever a permanent is returned to someone's hand, you get to draw a card. So I could see this being perhaps like some sort of blue-white control deck, which every blue-white deck is basically a control deck, so there's not much new with that. But it's more about bouncing than countering, I guess. There are some good bounce spells. I really like Divide by Zero. Divide by Zero is really, really quite good. There are some other ones that are out there. Of course, the typical sort of ones. It's interesting to think about this as sort of a blink style commander, I guess, to blink your own stuff back to your hand, recast it, get more value out of it, especially if you've got ETBs or whatnot, things like that. So hard for me to put my finger on exactly what this commander's doing, what its game plan is. But if you want to try to build around it, I think it could be pretty good as some sort of blink, sort of semi-control sort of commander. Though I wouldn't enjoy it, and I'm sure some people wouldn't enjoy it. So I'm going to give it a B for now, because it probably would be an A if it was not so unfun, I guess. But it's a bit unfun to play the game that, oh, look, I play my creature. Oh, look, it's back in my hand. Oh, cool. And now you've drawn a card. Wow. That's great. Good going, opponent. Now I have to either discard or I can't cast my thing again. Or can I? Because are you going to be able to bounce it every single turn? Are you going to be able to bounce every single person's thing? Like if you had things that kept untapping your stuff to get more mana and things like that during each opponent's turn, then of course it becomes a lot easier and things like that. But still, you do have to have the white, so maybe it will be harder than what I think. But again, it just seems like a miserable sort of commander to me. But let's move on. Next is this weird frog commander or enchantment-ish commander. So when you cast an enchantment, if you don't have a 3/3 token frog, you get a 3/3 token frog. And you can give him, this commander, and target frog unblockable, except by reach or flying, I think, until end of turn. Is this a Voltron commander? That is the immediate thought that comes into my mind. It makes when you casting these enchantments, which can be auras or whatever, buffs based auras or whatnot, or not auras, enchantments, onto your battlefield, that you get a 3/3. It cares about frogs, which is kind of weird. I guess everyone would want to build it as frog tribal because, of course, there's no other text on this card other than there's frogs. Okay, cool. All right. But it's an interesting Simic commander. It's certainly not as powerful as some of the Simic commanders that we've had, though that could be a good thing. I just don't get exactly what you're meant to do with it and where you can put it. Beyond Frog Tribal, what are you going to do with this? You're going to cast these enchantments and whatnot to do what? Again, is this a Voltron deck, or what are you doing with auras? Are you going to sack the frog to, drain life? Are you going to, cast a whole bunch of enchantments to keep getting frogs, keep sacking the frogs to get more mana, to keep casting more enchantments and things like that? I don't know. There could be some sort of deck that you could build like that could be interesting. But again, I just don't see what you're going to do with it. Unfortunately, I'm going to give it a C. I'm going to put it at the top of C because it is pretty good if you can find a specific way to build around it. But I do think that you need to find that way to build around it. Lastly, it's this weird equipment style commander, which is even weirder to say than what I would think it is. But basically, this thing, once it's equipped essentially to something, you've got a card that you can play lands off the top of your deck and cast spells off the top of your deck. That is quite strong, and you don't really need much to build around it. You just need a lot of good stuff, and you need a lot of mana so that you can cast a lot of your good stuff. the thing is, you need something to essentially equip this onto. So you're not going to get that ball rolling too quickly, even though it's only a 2-drop. I do think that there can be something that you could do with this. Maybe, especially like Muldrotha. Like Muldrotha really wants access to its graveyard, but this can give you access to your library as well, which can be really powerful. Being able to cast something from your library, play lands from your library, play things from your graveyard as well. That can be really powerful. So I do think that this is a strong commander, and I do think it's probably worthy of an A. At least. So I don't know. It's just the one thing that stumps me from thinking that this is a real top tier commander is that you have to find a way to essentially equip it to something else to get that ability rocking and rolling, essentially. And then you've got to keep that creature and this creature, which is also an artifact, alive so that you can cast all your stuff. So, and then what's the rest of the deck doing besides just blue good stuff, I guess? I don't know. So that's where I'm kind of like stuck on it. I'm sort of stuck on figuring out what you would build the deck around specifically. It's not specific enough to my liking for a commander I would build around, definitely. But it's a card that I think a lot of people might want to build around because it's such a weird thing and gives you such a good like payoff. So I do think that that can be very, very strong. So that's pretty much it, guys. We've come to the end of looking at all of the legendary creatures from this set. Again, let me know what you guys think. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below of what you think of me doing it as a tier list. I think it makes it a lot clearer. I want to do these in much more of a streamlined fashion as much as possible. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?